The violin's cry sliced through the autumn chill like a ghost clawing its way back from the grave, and in that single, shattering note, Elle Hawthorne's world cracked open. She had been hurrying down Fifth Avenue, her Louboutins clicking against the pavement in rhythm with the relentless pulse of Manhattan, when the melody hooked into her chest, a haunting rendition of Debussy's Clair de Lune that no one else could play quite like that. It stopped her cold, breath-catching as memories flooded in. Sun-dappled afternoons in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, tangled sheets, and whispers of forever. But forever had ended 16 years ago in a screech of tires and a hospital's sterile silence, or so the telegram had lied. Elle's hand flew to her throat, where a silver locket hung heavy, and she turned toward the sound, her heart thundering a betrayal it had no right to after all this time. There, under the shadow of a wrought iron lamppost, stood a woman with a violin tucked against her collarbone, eyes closed in fierce concentration as her bow danced across the strings. The crowd milled around her like indifferent waves, tossing crumpled bills into the open case at her feet, but Elle saw only the curve of those shoulders, the defiant tilt of her chin, the way her dark curls escaped a loose ponytail to frame a face that time had etched but not erased. Jordan, alive, breathing, pouring her soul into the street as if the city owed her every stolen breath. Elle's knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of a nearby newsstand to steady herself, the world blurring at the edges.
How?
The accident reports, the frantic calls to every morgue in the tri-state area, they'd all confirmed the worst. Yet here she was, the love Elle had buried in a mahogany urn beside her grandmother's grave, resurrected in the flesh on a sidewalk in Midtown. Elle's pulse roared in her ears, drowning out the violin's fade into silence as Jordan lowered her bow and blinked into the fading light, scanning the faces for the next tipper. Their eyes met then, Jordan's hazel gaze sharpening with polite detachment before it snagged, widened, and shattered like glass under a hammer. The violin slipped from her grip, clattering against the case, and for a heartbeat, the bustling avenue fell silent around them. Elle took a step forward, then another, her designer handbag swinging forgotten at her side, the weight of her fortune, mansions in the Hamptons, boardrooms conquered, a life built on the ashes of loss, meaningless in the face of this miracle. Jordan, she whispered, the name tasting like salt and sunlight on her tongue.
You're
here. Jordan's lips parted, but no sound came, only a raw, trembling exhale that spoke volumes of terror and triumph. In that moment, Elle knew. The past wasn't dead. It had just been waiting, bow in hand, for the right note to pull them back together. The rain started as a fine mist, then thickened into sheets that turned the streets into rivers of reflection, mirroring the chaos churning inside Elle. She hadn't moved since that first step, rooted to the spot as if the sidewalk had grown roots into her soul. Jordan snatched up her violin, cradling it like a shield, her knuckles white against the polished wood.
Elle?
The word was a rasp, barely audible over the patter on awnings and the distant honk of taxis. It was her voice, deeper now, laced with the gravel of years and unsung laments, but unmistakably the one that had once murmured sonnets into Elle's ear at 3 a.m. Jordan's eyes darted, wild as a cornered deer's, scanning for escape routes in the crowd that had paused to gawk at the unfolding drama. But Elle was faster this time, closing the distance in 3 strides, her hand reaching out to grasp Jordan's wrist. The contact was electric, a spark that ignited every nerve ending Elle had numbed with board meetings and vintage scotch. "Don't," Jordan hissed, yanking back but not hard enough to break free, her gaze flicking to Elle's face, older, sharper, framed by the sleek bob of a woman who commanded empires, yet softened by the same vulnerability that had stolen Jordan's heart at 19. Elle's emerald eyes, still piercing, brimmed with unshed tears, and the sight cracked something in Jordan's armor. "You're supposed to be dead," Elle said, her voice breaking on the word, raw and accusatory, laced with the grief she'd carried like a second skin. The lie of it all, the forged death notice, the whispers of a hit and run that never happened, hung between them, unspoken but screaming. Jordan's free hand trembled as she tucked a wet curl behind her ear, rain tracing paths down her cheeks that could have been tears. I thought, God, I buried you. I scattered your ashes in the Hudson at dawn, just like you wanted. How are you standing here, playing like the world didn't end? Jordan swallowed hard, her throat working as if swallowing shards of glass. The street musician's life had honed her into something fierce and frayed, scars from bar fights and dive lounges, nights busking under bridges when gigs dried up. But nothing had prepared her for this reckoning. It's a long story, she murmured, her voice barely cutting through the downpour. One that starts with a lie I never meant to tell. Elle's grip tightened, not painful but desperate, pulling Jordan closer until the scent of rosin and rain-soaked leather enveloped her, a time capsule of stolen kisses in Central Park. Around them, umbrellas bloomed like black flowers, pedestrians weaving past with muttered curses, oblivious to the earthquake shaking two women to their cores. Then tell me, Elle demanded, her executive poise fracturing into the fierce protectiveness of the girl who'd once fought her conservative family for a chance at this love. Right now. Because if you walk away again, Jordan, I swear I'll chase you to every corner of this godforsaken city. The plea hung heavy, and Jordan's resolve crumbled. She nodded once, sharp and resigned, slinging her violin case over her shoulder like a reluctant soldier. Not here. My place, it's a hole, but it's dry. Elle didn't hesitate, hailing a cab with the authority of someone used to bending the world to her will. As they slid into the back seat, shoulders brushing in the dim confines, the silence stretched taut, broken only by the slap of wipers and Jordan's soft, uneven breaths. Elle studied her profile, the faint scar above her eyebrow from a childhood fall they'd laughed about, the fullness of lips that had once traced Elle's collarbone with reverence. She was alive, impossibly, beautifully alive, and the joy warring with betrayal in Elle's chest threatened to consume her. The cab lurched toward the Lower East Side, where Jordan's life had devolved into a symphony of survival, and Elle wondered if this reunion was salvation or the cruelest twist yet. Jordan's place was a third-floor walk-up in a tenement that smelled of curry and regret, the kind of building where dreams went to wither on fire escapes. She fumbled with the key, her hand shaking as she pushed open the door to a studio barely larger than Elle's walk-in closet back on Park Avenue. The space was a testament to makeshift artistry, a futon piled with threadbare quilts, a card table scarred from years as a music stand, walls papered in faded concert posters and scribbled lyrics on napkins. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting long shadows that danced like specters as Jordan flicked it on. Make yourself comfortable, she said, voice thick with awkwardness, setting her violin case on the floor with reverence. Elle stepped inside, shedding her coat onto a rickety chair, the opulence of her Burberry wool absurd against the peeling linoleum. She felt like an intruder in her own memory, the girl who'd once crashed here after sorority mixers, whispering rebellions against the world that deemed their love a phase. They faced each other across the room, the air humming with unspoken accusations. Jordan leaned against the windowsill, arms crossed like a barrier, rain streaking the glass behind her in rivulets that mirrored Elle's unraveling composure. I never died, Elle. That night. The crash. It was bad. Yeah, truck sideswiped my bike on the bridge. Coma for weeks. When I woke up, everything was gone. My wallet, my phone, my it. Some orderly thought I was a Jane Doe, and by the time they figured it out, I'd overheard the doctors talking about pulling the plug if no family claimed me. Her words tumbled out, jagged and hurried, as if delaying would make them vanish. Elle's stomach twisted, picturing it, Jordan, pale and broken in a hospital bed, tubes snaking from her arms, while Elle grieved a phantom. I panicked. My folks, they disowned me when I came out, remember? Called it a sin, shipped me off to conversion camp that I bolted from. No insurance, no safety net. So I let them think I was gone. Signed out AMA, hitched to Philly, started over. New name, new nothing. It was supposed to be mercy for you mostly. You deserved better than scraping by with a ghost. Elle's laugh was bitter, bordering on hysteria, as she sank onto the futon, the springs groaning under her. Mercy? You call vanishing mercy? I sold everything, Jordan. The ring you gave me from that pawn shop in Soho, the guitar you taught me to strum, gone, to fund a life that felt like half-living. I built Hawthorne Enterprises on that void, turned grief into billions, but every night, I dream of your laugh, your hands on me, and wake up screaming your name. Tears spilled now, hot and unbidden, carving tracks down her cheeks. Jordan crossed the room in 2 strides, dropping to her knees before Elle, her calloused palms cupping Elle's face with a gentleness that belied the years of hardship. Up close, the lines around her eyes told stories of sun-baked highways and empty stages, but her touch was the same, sure, reverent, igniting embers Elle had long thought extinguished. I'm sorry, Jordan breathed, thumbs brushing away the salt, her own eyes glistening. Every chord I've played, since it's been for you. Claire de Lune on street corners, because it was our song, the one we danced to in that dive bar, drunk on cheap wine and possibility. Elle leaned into the touch, her body remembering what her mind had tried to forget, the curve of Jordan's waist under her fingers, the taste of her like summer storms. The kiss started tentative, a brush of lips born of desperation, but it deepened swiftly, hungry and healing, tongues rediscovering paths long overgrown. Jordan's hands slid into Elle's hair, pulling her closer, and for a moment, the room spun away. The rain, the poverty, the lies, leaving only the fierce, unyielding truth of their bodies speaking what words could not. When they broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together, Elle whispered, "Don't leave me again. Not ever." Jordan's smile was small, shadowed by doubt. "I won't. But this. Us. It's been a lifetime. Can we even fit anymore?" The question lingered like smoke as they disentangled, the futon's rumple a testament to the fire they'd reignited. Jordan rose to brew coffee from a dented pot, the domesticity a fragile bridge over the chasm of lost years. Elle watched her move, memorizing the sway of hips that had once been her anchor, now leaner from skipped meals and endless miles. Over chipped mugs, the stories poured out. Jordan's odyssey through busking circuits from Boston to New Orleans, gigs in smoky clubs where she poured her ache into folk ballads that masked lesbian anthems for wary crowds. Elle shared her ascent, the MBA from Wharton, the merger that made her a Forbes list darling, the parade of empty dates with men who saw her as a trophy, never the woman who'd loved fiercely and lost everything. "I thought I'd armor myself," Elle admitted, staring into the steam. "But seeing you today, it stripped me bare. You're still the melody I can't shake." Dawn crept in through the grimy window, painting their faces in soft gold, and with it came the first cracks in their fragile peace. Jordan's phone buzzed, a cracked burner on the table, pulling her from Elle's side with a grimace. "Landlord. Rent's due, and I'm short again." The words landed like stones, reminding Elle of the gulf between them, her penthouse versus this shoebox, her chauffeured life versus Jordan's subway serenades. Guilt twisted in her gut, not pity, but the sharp awareness of how her privilege had insulated her while Jordan scraped by. "Let me help," Elle said, reaching for her purse. Jordan's hand shot out, stopping her. "No. I didn't survive all this to be your charity case. We do this right or not at all." The defiance in her eyes, that same spark that had drawn Elle in at a college open mic, reignited the pull between them. They spent the morning tangled in sheets, bodies mapping old territories with new tenderness, laughter bubbling up amid tears as they traded, what-ifs like secrets. But as noon bells tolled from a distant church, reality intruded. Elle's assistant called, voice clipped through the door she'd cracked open. "Miss Hawthorne, the Tokyo delegation is waiting. Your helicopter leaves in 2 hours." Elle silenced it, but the wait settled. Jordan dressed quietly, pulling on jeans worn thin at the knees, her violin case a constant companion. "Go," she said softly, no bitterness, only quiet resolve. Conquer the world. I'll be here, playing for tips and you. Elle pulled her into a fierce embrace, memorizing the rhythm of her heartbeat. This isn't goodbye. Dinner tonight, my place. We'll figure out the rest. Jordan nodded, but doubt flickered in her gaze, the street's call already whispering temptations of flight. Elle emerged into the day changed, the city's clamor a symphony now laced with Jordan's echo. Her helicopter ride over the skyline was a blur, negotiations sealing deals worth millions, but her mind wandered to shadowed alleys and the woman who'd slipped through her fingers once. By evening, she'd cleared her schedule, transforming her rooftop terrace into a haven, candlelight flickering against glass railings, a table set with Jordan's favorites, oysters from the market, a bottle of the Riesling they'd shared on their first road trip. When Jordan arrived, hesitant in a borrowed dress from a thrift shop, the sight of her against the glittering horizon stole Elle's breath. They dined under stars smudged by light pollution, toasting to second chances, hands entwining across linen. I wrote a song for you, Jordan confessed, pulling a notebook from her bag, pages yellowed with ballpoint confessions. She sang then, voice raw and soaring, lyrics weaving their youth into verses of survival and longing. Elle wept openly, the city below a distant hum, as Jordan's melody wrapped around them like a vow. Yet tenderness bred vulnerability, and with it, shadows. As they made love on silk sheets overlooking the Hudson, Jordan's body tensed beneath Elle's touch, old scars surfacing, literal and not. A jagged line across her ribs from a bar brawl in Nashville, where a drunk had sneered slurs at her Butch Dyke swagger. Hate follows us, Jordan murmured into the dark, Elle's head pillowed on her chest. Always has. Back then, your family's dinner tables, the campus whispers. Now? It's the stares on the subway, the cops who hassle me for loitering with my fiddle. Elle held her tighter, fury simmering at the world's cruelty, her own closets, literal and figurative, long since purged. We fight it together this time. I've got lawyers, influence. No one touches you again. But Jordan's laugh was wry. Power's a double-edged bow, love. It saved you, but it might scare me off. The weeks blurred into a delicate dance, stolen moments amid Elle's empire building and Jordan's nocturnal gigs. Elle attended a performance in a village jazz hall, perched in the shadows as Jordan commanded the stage, her violin weeping tales of lost lovers that masked their own. Applause thundered, but Elle's pride swelled hotter, mingled with a fierce possessiveness that unsettled her. At home, they cooked pasta in Elle's chef's kitchen, Jordan teaching her to improvise riffs on the baby grand piano Elle had bought on impulse, a Steinway that gathered dust until now. Laughter echoed off marble counters, but so did arguments. Jordan's insistence on paying her own way, Elle's offers of stability that felt like chains. I'm not your project, Jordan snapped one night, after Elle suggested a trust fund. I'm the woman who loved you broke and wild. Elle recoiled, the sting of truth cutting deep, forcing her to confront how loss had twisted her into a fixer, not a partner. Tension crested on a crisp November evening as they strolled Central Park hand in hand, leaves crunching underfoot like brittle memories. Jordan had been distant, her playing edgier, notes laced with discord. What's wrong? Elle pressed, stopping beneath the Bethesda fountain, where they'd shared their first illicit kiss as undergrads. Jordan's eyes, shadowed by exhaustion, met hers. I saw your ex at that gala last week. The banker, all smiles and schmoozing. She asked about you, said you two were perfect on paper. Elle's jaw tightened, the ghost of societal pressure rearing. That was nothing. A setup, a phase to appease the board. But Jordan pulled away, voice cracking. And me? Am I the secret again? The street rat who doesn't fit your penthouse puzzle. The accusation landed like a bowstring snap, exposing the fracture. Elle's world demanded perfection, while Jordan's thrived on raw edges. They fought then, words flying sharp as shattered strings, accusations of control, abandonment, the fear that bridged time couldn't span class. Jordan stormed off into the twilight, violin case banging against her thigh, leaving Elle alone with the fountain spray misting her tears. Hours ticked by in agony. Elle paced her loft, phone clutched like a lifeline, replaying every misstep. Dawn found her at the bridge where it all ended, the Hudson churning gray below, whispering regrets. She drove to the Lower East Side, pounding on Jordan's door until it cracked open, revealing red-rimmed eyes and a disheveled woman clutching a half-empty bottle of bourbon. "I can't lose you twice," Elle choked out, collapsing into Jordan's arms. They held each other on the threshold, sobs mingling, until Jordan pulled back, fierce. "Then let me in all the way. No half measures. We build something real. Messy as hell." Forgiveness bloomed tentative, watered by honesty. Elle downsized her schedule, delegating empires to reclaim evenings for subway rides to Jordan's gigs, where she'd linger in dive bars, nursing beers and fending off leers with a glare honed on boardrooms. Jordan, in turn, let Elle sponsor a small recital series, nothing flashy, just a stage in a community center for queer artists, where Jordan's music could breathe without commercial chains. Their love deepened in the margins. Lazy Sundays in bed, Jordan's fingers tracing Elle's spine as she recounted boardroom battles, Elle braiding Jordan's curls while she hummed originals born of their reunion. Intimacy evolved, no longer frantic but exploratory, bodies relearning trust, Jordan's vulnerability in submission, Elle's strength in surrender. Winter gripped the city in ice, but their bond warmed like heathfire. Holiday lights twinkled from brownstones as they hosted a quiet solstice dinner for misfit friends, Elle's queer mentor from Wharton, Jordan's bandmate from a long-ago tour. Laughter filled the air, toasts raised to loves reclaimed, and in the candle flicker, Elle slipped a ring onto Jordan's finger, not diamonds, but a simple gold band etched with a musical staff, notes spelling their initials in code. "Marry me," Elle whispered later, under down blankets scented with pine. Jordan's yes was a melody, soft and sure, sealing promises etched in scar tissue. Yet fate, ever the dramatist, tested them one final time. Spring thawed the streets, bringing bloom and betrayal. A tabloid hack, sniffing for dirt on Elle's sudden domesticity, unearthed Jordan's fabricated past, the death that had fueled Elle's mythic rise. Headlines screamed, "Heiress's hoax lover, resurrection or ruse?" Reporters swarmed the penthouse, paparazzi trailing Jordan's busks, dredging up old wounds. Jordan's phone rang off the hook with offers from reality vultures, her privacy shredded like sheet music in a gale. "I told you power bites back," she said one night, pacing the terrace as Manhattan glittered indifferently below. Elle, hollow-eyed from crisis calls, pulled her close. "We face it. Together. No hiding." The storm peaked at a press conference Elle commandeered, turning the narrative with unflinching grace. Flanked by Jordan, violin in hand, she addressed the frenzy. "This woman didn't die on me. She survived. And in doing so, she taught me that love isn't a ledger or a legacy. It's the courage to play through the silence, to love without apology in a world that demands we dim our lights." Jordan played then, Claire de Lune rising like a phoenix, silencing the room. The video went viral, not for scandal, but for truth, queer resilience, second chances, the human heart's unyielding score. Summer arrived on waves of heat, their wedding a quiet affair in the Hamptons, bare feet on beach sand, vows exchanged under a canopy of wild roses, Jordan in a linen suit, Elle in flowing white, rings exchanged amid waves crashing like applause. Friends toasted with champagne, but the real celebration was private. Nights of passion where bodies and souls intertwined, erasing years in gasps and grips. Elle stepped down from CEO, channeling her fortune into an arts foundation for LGBTQ+ musicians, Jordan at its helm, her compositions now funded, not fettered. Years folded like well-worn pages, their love a enduring refrain. Elle, silver threading her hair, watched Jordan teach fiddle to wide-eyed kids in community centers, the same fierce grace that had captivated her undimmed. On anniversaries, they'd return to that Fifth Avenue corner, Jordan playing as tourists tossed coins, Elle slipping a fresh bill with a note for the ghost who came home. In quiet moments, Elle would trace the locket now shared between them, whispering thanks to the universe for cruel mercies. And so, in the twilight of their days, they proved that some melodies, once struck, echo eternally, defiant, tender, unbreakable. Love, they learned, wasn't about perfection or permanence, but the raw, reckless choice to harmonize through every storm. In each other's arms, they found not just survival, but symphony.